Hey guys, welcome to DTM Films Pricing Calculator. This is version 1.0 of this video. I'm going to make a much fancier version right now. It's an MVP, so I'm just getting it out. But thank you guys. This is the instructional video. So you'll notice right here, there's this gap in that big orange bar. And then right below it, there's a link to another video. We are making this instruction video right now. So if you want to, you can always rewatch it later. Awesome. What we're doing here is this video underneath is to Chris Howe's video. He's a very well-known and experienced videographer. And Lizzie Pierce, the girl next right to him, is a very well-known photographer. So again, a lot of these numbers you'll see over here in the calculator, but also in the orange mini section, and I'll talk about that later in a little bit, is based off of that video and their 10 years of experience and their pricing, coupled with 2-3 hours of deep dive and research with me and AI, and having AI and Google go through and find what the national averages are, what for and different experience levels and stuff, and then I kind of combined them all together, and that's what we got. So that's what this mini orange, the orange mini sections are. This is saying taking Chris Howe's and AI's research, putting them together, and this is about the cost of what you should be charging for editing or filming, or if you're being a producer and shooter editor, predator as Chris Howe calls it. And at what level are you, beginner, intermediate, or advanced? So that's the mini orange sections. Great. The other section you need to be aware of is what I'm calling the overhead section. You're going to hear the word section a lot, but the overhead section, or up in the overhead, actually let's just call it the overhead. Up in the overhead, up here, right next to the name of the pricing calculator, you'll see there are 6 main chapters. I'm going to call them chapters. Everything else is section. These are the overhead chapters. The chapters are the total of the other sections, and the sections is everything else below the pricing calculator title, the overhead, and the 2 videos. Everything below that are sections. Okay, I've highlighted them here. So every time you put something into one of those sections, and each section has its own blue title, so that you know what section you're in, but then also each section is color coded either green or red, just like up in the overhead chapters. That's because both in the overhead chapters or down in the actual sections, I'm letting you know anything green means this is where you're profiting. You're actually making money for your work and effort and your deliverables, your content. Anything red is where you're technically losing money, right? So that's why you have up in the overhead chapters the total bill to client chapter that says here is the total of all the other totals, section totals, and this is what you actually send as an invoice to the client, and say here's when they say what's the price or how much is it going to cost me, you send them the total to bill client chapter number. And then for your own sake, you have the total of your expenses from the 2 red sections, and you have the total of your profit, which is all of the green sections minus the expenses from the bill to the client. So just to rephrase that in case that confused anyone, you're sending you're sending your total bill to the client. You're sending that number over to him. For the sake of right now, I got $3,579 is what I'd technically be sending a client for what we have everything in here right now. As this is just all example stuff. But I'd say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost. The expenses right above it is subtracted from the total to the bill of the client. You take the expenses and minus it from the total bill to the client, and then that tells you how much you're actually profiting off this job. So I'm technically not really making all $3,579. I'd be making $1,847. And you say, well, why is that, Dan? The invoice is $3,500. Yes, but out of that $3,500, I had expenses. I had things that I had to buy in order to make the project work for the client. A great example of that is the software and subscription section, where you're like, I have to have an Adobe section, a subscription to Artlist, a subscription to Loom and to Zoom and the ChatGPT, and these are monthly expenses, right? And so I may have the client pay me $3,500, but then I have to pay for all of those subscriptions and the software that I have. And heaven forbid, if I have a gear rental, right? If I have to rent a camera or rent a light, right? Then I also have to add that on top. And so I'm not actually profiting the whole $3,500. I'm spending X amount out of that $3,500 for that project to happen. and what's left over is the profit. In this case, $1,847. That's how the overhead chapter up by the name of the calculator works. So the most of the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory, right? You are going to be constantly referring to the orange mini sections to decide where you are, what level, and how much you should be charging, right? So theoretically, at least where I'm based off of in Southeast Idaho, there's a lot of misconceptions with clients and freelancers. They understand how to do things with production houses, but they don't treat production houses. And so what I mean by that is, my experience is when I charge a client and then I say, well, do you want, I charge them to go shoot. And then I say, are you going to edit this shit yourself or do they want me to edit? They'll always usually say, oh, I thought you were already going to edit that. Wasn't that already included in the price? I'm like, no, you're charging me. I'm charging you and you're paying me to come shoot the content for you because you are paying for my experience, my knowledge, my skill, my creative eye to shoot that content. But then editing's a whole other game. And so do you want me to also edit, or are you going to have your own editor in-house, or are you going to try and edit yourself? And that will sometimes shock most of them. And I'm like, this is technically industry standard. They're not understanding that this is how our industry works, right? And so a lot of students and a lot of creators in this area, I find out, will do the predator approach, which is what I'm doing. And I'm starting to kind of break away and start to do more like, no, you're paying for shooting, and then you're paying for editing, and then you're paying for gear tax versus this predator. And the predator, you can still, let me rephrase that. The predator is what you want to get to as well. Like, you want to be able to do all of it, but you also have to price for each section. They're thinking it as a total, and it's like, no, you're charging me to be the producer, you're charging me to be the shooter, you're charging me to be the editor, you're charging me to be the distributor if you want me to be like your social media manager too. And so each one of those is its own job. People have them as their lifelong career, and since I'm going to do all 3 or 4 jobs, I'm going to charge as if it was the same, like if it was for just one person, and then put them all together. It's going to be a big sum. Anyways, so with that said, if you're in your first 6 months, first year, you're probably a beginner. Year and a half, maybe still a beginner too. When you hit your second or third year, you could probably say you're an intermediate. When you are, I would say, above 3 to 5 years, probably 5 years, probably more advanced or pro, right? And then you see one says, what should I charge for editing? One says, what should I charge for filming? Come on. And then one goes for filming. So again, you'll go over to the production or shooting and say, let me change that actually. And let me just put filming. There we go. I'll make that change right now. Okay, there we go. Filming. So you can say I am an intermediate. So you should be charging somewhere between $40 to $75 an hour to go shoot, based off of my research with AI and Chris Howe's 10 years of experience and his recommendation for pricing. So that means if I'm a beginner, I'm probably going to come over, I'm going to start at $40 an hour, right? And then I'm going to say, they're going to say, we need you for 4 hours. Cool. 4 times 40, it's $160. You're probably thinking, damn, that's not much, $160. Hold on, it's going to add up, right? Let's go like this for the moment, and let's turn everything else to 0. Well, we'll get to that in a second. So let me get rid of gear tax, actually. Let's just do that. Bingo. So on-site film, they need you for $4, 4 hours, it's $40 an hour. Rate is, so your subtotal is $160. Notice the production total down at the bottom of that section now updates to $160. Because what it does is every time you go from horizontal, from left to right, and you finish that row, each row will take the subtotal, and the subtotal takes that entire column up and down, and then spits out a total production number down at the very bottom of the column. And then that number will go all the way up to the overhead section, the production overhead section. Make sense? So, let's say you're doing post-production and you are a beginner. So a beginner charges somewhere from $10 to $40 an hour. You're going to say, well, this is my first 6 months, so I'm going to do $10 an hour. And it took me 10 hours. To edit that. It takes me 10 hours to edit the horizontal interview video that they paid me for and we shot. Right? So that's another $100. So that's $100 down at the editing, right? Now let me take a second and let me do this. Whoops. Let me change all that to subscription. All right, so now let's say I know I need Adobe, which is about $40, so $30.99, right? And I have it. They're gonna have me only do this project this month, right? So 1 month. If it was a retainer, right, I could say, okay, they bought a 3-month package or they bought a 6-month package, and I can say, okay, then it goes to $239 for 6 months. But in this case, it's just 1 week of shooting. That's 1 month. Then that's the total charge, right? Deliverables. First deliverable. Let's change that and let's say horror. Let's go long form video quantity. They have 1. The rate, well, for a long form video, this is where this is not how much it costs for you to shoot on site, and this is not how much it costs you to edit. This is where you yourself say, from what I think I'm worth, right? For me to go spend those 4 hours and the 10 hours of editing, that 14 hours of work, not only am I charging for those two, but the product or the quality of the product that I put out, I think is worth, say, $500 for one long form video as a beginner, right? Then you say, cool, it's $500 for that. Then you can say second deliverable. Maybe they didn't order a second deliverable. As Parker Wahlbeck always says, and I'm teaching my interns, always undervalue and over deliver, right? So they're thinking they paid for one long form video. I'm gonna be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make you 2 shorts. I'm gonna make you 2 shorts, 2 vertical shorts. Actually, let me take that back and just put vertical shorts, vertical short. Right? I'm making 2 of them. Each one is $250. That's $500. However, I'm gonna do it for free. I don't want to surprise them with an extra $500 and have them be like, where'd this $500 come from? We thought we ordered just 1 long form video, and now you're charging for 2 extra shorts. That's gonna ruin your reputation. So I'm gonna put 0 because I'm giving them those 2 extra for free. But I can at least keep track and say, okay, you know, after I send it to them, I can say, okay, well, here, how much should I have charged them? I should have charged them another $500. You know, it should have been $1,000 for the deliverable. We're not going to do that, right? But you'll see the deliverables total is now $500, right? Now we can say gear rentals. Let's say we actually did have to get a gear rental, and let's say we said, let's change that one. Let's say we had to rent a second camera. So we rented a Sony ZV-E1, I think is what's called, ZV-E1, right? And I think it was $75 last time I checked. Okay, we need to change that a little bit though. $75 to charge that. And then I need to make one more column here, but we'll have a column that says, you can say, well, how many days did you rent it, right? And then you'll have the subtotal there, and that'll be your expenses total. So now if we look up top, we can say, okay, now up in the overhead section, up at the top of the name of the calculator, right? We can see production's going to cost us $160 to go shoot for 4 hours, right? It's going to take 10 hours of editing. And you can say, well, how do you know that, Dan? Because I did 10, 15 videos for free when I first started out, right? I did free videos for 10 to 15 of them. And after the first few, I started actually keeping track and timing myself. I would grab sticky notes, right? And on the sticky note, I would say, okay, I edited on Monday, the 6th, and I edited from 2 to 4, 2 hours for this project. Okay, came back on Wednesday, same project, and it took me 3 hours to finish this, right? And then 1 hour. And so I get to the end on Sunday, and I realize, okay, to edit this one project, it took me 10 hours to edit this, and this is what I averaged, and I did that like 10 times after the first 2 or 3. I did 15 free videos, and the 10 after that, after the first 5, the next 10 I did that, so I could see, okay, after doing that 3 or 4 free videos, I realized 3 or 4 videos, the average time was about 10 hours for each project. So I realized, okay, I can make a long form video in 10 hours, right, or 5 hours, whatever. That's where your free to fee comes in. That's a whole other YouTube video and lesson and everything. But then the deliverables, right? The value of what they're getting based on my experience, my skill level, the quality of my product, and they think I'm worth working with. then I'd say is $500. And when I have the email or the phone call with them and they ask, I will tell them that. They'll say, how much do you normally charge? I'll say $500 for a long form video. And that's before you send this invoice and do this calculator with them. You're sort of spitballing that. You say, it's $500 a video. And they'll say, well, how much is this going to cost me? And then you say, well, I got a couple other things I need to figure out, like how many hours we're going to be shooting, how long it's going to take to editing. So it's going to be a little bit more than $500, but you're looking somewhere between $500 to $800, right? And is that somewhere within your budget? And it's yes or no. In this case, they said yes, so we're now setting it up on the calculator. So now we look at the expenses and say, okay, the expenses though, to have the Adobe for 1 month and to have the Sony ZVE rented out for 1 day, $75, and only one of them, it's going to cost me $114. So I'm actually losing money on this project, and I'm losing up to $114. But I'm charging them overall $874 because I'm accounting for that loss, and I'm adding that charge to me on my charge to them. Now, clients are going to get upset if you phrase it that way because they're going to be like, why am I paying for your stuff, your subscription, your gear? You have to help them understand and say, because you're paying me to make this video for you and all that, to stay and all that at the cost I'm charging you, because I'm saving you the money and time, the hours that I had to go buy my own gear, learn how to use it, and then invest the 10 hours of editing and the 4 hours of shooting. If you want to save yourself money, you don't want to work with me on this project, that's fine, but then you're going to have to go buy your own camera, spend your own 4 hours to shoot, your own 10 hours to edit, and then you're going to have to do your own camera rent out. Like, it's going to cost you the same amount or more, right? You're spending a small amount on me now so that you can buy back your time, so that instead of you having to worry about creating this video or this content, you can put it where it's somewhere more important with your business, which could be you working on marketing to get sales and leads, or to work on customer support, other things. So at the end of the day, once you've had that talk with them, then you realize, okay, you take the expenses, you minus that from the total bill of the client, which was $874. And so they paid me $874. You're technically still losing the $114. So you're really walking away with about $760 from this project, because you had to invest in subscriptions and the gear rental. But that's still like pretty good chunk of money, right? So that's how this calculator works. Now I'll have this video up here that we're making right now. It'll be in the instructional video section, orange bar, so you can always rewatch this if you have questions on how to use it or whatever. If you have questions about these numbers or how they work, or want some other kind of formulas you can work on and making your own calculator, fine. You can find that in Chris Howe's video. But that is the gist of how to work with the pricing calculator, the light version. You're probably wondering if you made it this far in the video. Great, congrats, thanks for sticking around. You're wondering, Dan, what's the light mean? This whole calculator is based off, as you can see, on hourly pay. This is for beginners to beginner intermediates, right? And the idea is a lot of the interns and students I work with, my interns, right, and my students, they're still charging hourly rates for this area. Instead of starting to charge on day rates or flat rates or value-based rates or retainer rates, if they can get retainer. And so my advanced version, which is going to take a lot more, a couple more months actually, a lot more months to make, is going to have, again, it's going to be same thing, plug and play, or all the formulas will be done, baked in, you can do it right away. But the idea is it will be having certain areas where you can do a little drop-down menu, and you can literally switch hour rate, flat rate, day rate, value-based rate, retainer rate. And then even if you've plugged in all these numbers like this, the formulas, the built-in behind-the-scene formulas, change instantly and update and recalculate all the numbers at once and give you a whole nother expenses and profit number. Like, it changes all the numbers in real time and shows you, based on that particular pricing strategy, that particular way of pricing, what your charges and rates and everything are should actually cost. That's coming in the future. That's the advanced version. And that may or may not be in my course, online video course that I'm making, but that will give you the gist that you guys can do. So if you guys have any other further questions or any problems, let me know. You can always, write me, Dan at dtmfilm.com, or help at dtmfilm.com, or support at DTM, and I will help you guys with that as well. But that's the pricing calculator for now. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Congratulations on getting the pricing calculator, I would love to hear you guys' feedback in emails and comments once you get using it. I want to hear how many jobs it's helped you gotten and how it's helped you that way. So thank you guys. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you on the flip side.